My name is actually Gilbertson, and I'm a photographer with 7 Network. Since 2002, I've been working in Iraq up until 2008, mostly on assignment for the New York Times. But initially when I went in, I was entirely freelance. I spent a significant portion of time embedded with American units after the invasion, as it became a real war, I guess. And I spent a lot of time driving around Baghdad and the provinces, photographing, life for the Iraqis as well. In 2007, I published my first book, and only book actually, called Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And that was a book of war photography. I mean, much like most books of war that you see, maybe not as strong, but it was really my experience. And through the course of 2006, when I was living in Italy and Austria, working with an organization called Fabrica, I wrote the text for the book, and had it rewritten by my wife, which was a very, very personal account of what I think I learnt and how my thinking changed through the war. After publishing that, and I guess after some pretty intense experiences in Iraq, I started trying to find a new way of looking at war. I felt that the public wasn't connecting as deeply as they once were with what was taking place in Iraq, that interest had waned. But more importantly, I feel that the general public had really been fatigued by seeing very similar images coming out over and over and over again from Iraq. So I started looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, at suicide in soldiers, and at death, and trying to understand what it meant, what those deaths in Iraq actually meant to American families and American communities. And this has long been a subject that I've been really interested in, and while I was living in Europe for that year, I worked specifically on a project about mortality and death, and I think my ideas, in regard to what it means to die and what that means to the rest of the community and families, most importantly, really, I guess, matured in some way, became more developed. I learnt that death means that the most painful and difficult part of death is the absence that one experiences, which is virtually impossible to photograph, or so I felt. I was constantly spending time in cemeteries, at funerals, photographing corpses, and after some time of this, I really felt like I was missing the whole point of what it means to die and how do we deal with that. And my wife suggested, Joanna, that I photographed the bedrooms of fallen soldiers. So I started by photographing the bedroom, spending a lot of time with the family and then photographing Sergeant Thomas Gilbert's bedroom, who lived outside of Chicago in Downers Grove, Illinois. And that was the middle of 2007. I'm still working on the project today. It ran as a series of 19 photographs in the New York Times Magazine, who underwrote a large portion of the project. And standing inside these bedrooms today feels exactly the same as when I entered the first bedroom, Tommy's bedroom, in 2007. It's really this feeling of being so deeply connected with what's taking place in Iraq, but also what's taking place here. It's a way that, I find it, as hard photographing these spaces as the most intense battles and the most intense grief that I photographed in Iraq. You stand there and you feel like you have a sense of who these kids are, who they were. And you're talking to their parents and you're learning about who they are, and in almost every case, they're these amazing kids that you leave the home after spending hours with their parents and hours in their bedroom, that one day you're going to meet them, that it's but you know, really, you fully understand that's never going to take place. I mean, but the bedrooms are supposed to act as a, I guess, a tribute to their lives, more than a memorial for their death. Yes, it's a way to remember them. Yes, it's a way of making people understand who is in Iraq and in Afghanistan fighting, and it's very much an extension of the work that I was doing in country. But I want people to understand that these aren't just names and numbers and ranks. That, you know, when you read an obituary in a newspaper, after one of these guys dies, that's the end of it. I want people around the world to look at these images and understand that we're losing human beings that were deeply loved and that are missed every single day of the families' lives. That this isn't something that goes away. I mean, one mother in Arlington National Cemetery told me that she feels like the names of the dead are listed after the evening news, and then they're forgotten by the time, you know, the late night talk show host comes on. And the more I've worked on this, the more I've felt that this disconnect between Americans who read about the news or don't read about the war, more importantly, and Americans who are personally involved in what's taking place. I think that we need to pay tribute and remember these guys for the lives that they led, as much as, you know, when and where they died. And this is the project that I found, I think, that resonates with the general public more than anything else I've ever worked on in conflict before. So I hope that you as viewers find them as enlightening about who these kids were, and find a way to connect with these human beings and be familiar with who these people are, and therefore the story. I thank you for watching, and